If there is one thing that the latest IPCC report on the state of our climate made clear to us, it's this. It's more urgent than ever to only vote for politicians who are willing to tackle the climate crisis. We must stay under the 1.5-degree temperature increase, and that can only happen if we fundamentally change how our societies work. The good news is that the technologies and the ideas to do that already exist. They just need to be implemented. With individual climate action being stronger than ever, it's only politics standing in the way of averting the worst consequences of the climate crisis. Many people are increasingly asking whether democracy, with its short election cycles, will ever be able to implement the vital changes quickly enough. The problem is not that democracy doesn't work, it's that democracy is not being implemented, at least not a fair version of it. Democracy is a relatively recent experiment, and in the past 100 years, not much has been done to adapt it. Coming up, 3 ideas of how to update democracy. Democracy has many forms. In this video, we'll be focusing on how we can make parliamentary democracies better, which is the prevailing system in many countries. In a parliamentary system, citizens are voting for a pre-selected list of candidates of a specific party who will then go and fill the seats in parliament depending on the amount of votes they got. When a specific party or a coalition of parties has gained enough seats, they will then go ahead and elect their preferred candidate for president, prime minister, or chancellor. But this system ends up ignoring a significant part of citizens' votes. How so? In Germany, for example, political parties need to reach a 5% threshold of all total votes in order to enter parliament. This barrier exists in many places, but the number varies from country to country, the goal being to stop parliament from being too fragmented. But this is a negative effect. Firstly, people know that small parties are probably not going to surpass that threshold, so they are compelled to cast so-called strategic votes. So for example, I might vote for a bigger party that I don't fully agree with, just because I know they can make it into parliament and they are the lesser of 2, 3, maybe 4 evils. If I do vote for a smaller party that doesn't surpass the threshold, my vote is simply redistributed proportionally to the rest of the bigger established parties that did make it into parliament. This way, established parties end up having more seats in parliament than voters strictly intended for them to have. And because the redistribution doesn't take into account my ideological preference, my vote might end up benefiting a party that I actually disagree with. For example, one that doesn't believe in climate action. Instead, why not allow me to cast a second alternative vote for one of the parties that is likely to make it into parliament? So if my small preferred party makes it into parliament, that vote counts. If not, my second alternative vote counts. Either way, my voice is heard. Then there's also the question of whether people under the age of 18 should be able to vote. Right now, they are completely excluded from the decision-making process, although they make about 20% of the world population, and they stand to lose most from political inaction in the climate crisis. It's not only teenagers who don't have a say. Once we've casted our votes, none of us have much influence on policies and laws. In theory, Parliament, the people we actually voted for, is the institution that proposes new laws. But in reality, that's not exactly how it happens. Unless one party is the clear winner of an election, several parties are going to have to create a coalition or some type of agreement. To do this, they need to make concessions. That's okay, compromise is part of democracy. The problem is that this happens behind closed doors, stirred by party functionaries that none of us voted for and who will determine the policies that will influence our lives until the next election cycle. In order to prevent this, in recent years, people have suggested creating citizen councils or citizen assemblies. There are many versions of this concept, but essentially the idea is to put together a group of randomly chosen citizens who best reflect the entirety of society. The citizens would be accompanied by a group of experts who would give them the information and background they need to make recommendations on bills or actions on a specific topic, for example, on how to act against the climate crisis. The results of citizen councils could be sent over to Parliament as recommendations, or even better, we can make them binding for the acting government, perhaps after letting the general population vote on them in a referendum. As I said, there are many different ways to do this. The main idea is to involve citizens directly in decision making. Let us know in the comments, what do you make of citizens' assemblies? Do you think it's a good idea? The idea of citizens' assemblies can also be applied to strengthen one of the most important concepts of democracy, the separation of powers. Put simply, separation of powers means that the government is divided into 3 branches, each with independent powers and responsibilities, which are passing laws, implementing them, and making sure they don't violate the Constitution or any prevailing law, like, for example, those pertaining to human rights. These tasks are assigned to different institutions independent from each other to create a system of checks and balances, at least in theory. In many democracies, the institutions that appoint judges or supervise the judiciary institutions are they themselves party functionaries assigned by and who respond to the governing party. For example, in Germany, the prosecutor's office responds to the Justice Ministry, which is of course ruled by the governing party. Unfortunately, we see similar tactics across Europe, and they're accepted by traditional parties because they know that when it's their turn to rule, they'll do the same. Instead, a council of citizens could act as a truly independent body. This body could veto any attempt by the government to influence the judicial process. For example, by attempting to expel or exchange a judge who holds different opinions than the governing party. So there you go, those are 3 ideas of how to update democracy. Voting is important. Please do go vote if you have that right. But it's far from sufficient. We need structural change and we need everyone to participate in it. So have a good think about what interests you most. Is it local politics? Is it national, transnational politics? Whichever one it is, choose one topic, one area, and learn everything about it. Thanks for watching. Let us know what you thought of our ideas of how to improve democracy, and if you have some of your own, we'd love to hear them. See you next time.